Witches in the Vampire Diaries universe are some of the most powerful beings in the entire verse, and almost certainly some of the most important, as quite literally every single major event in the Vampire Diaries universe involves a witch and a spell done through magic. Every single one of these spells fall under at least one magical classification, and these classifications are what is dubbed as the different types of magic, in which there are 10. Don't get confused with magic practices, as that's more an in-depth label on the different ways you can practice the different types of magic. Also, this doesn't include magical abilities like siphoning, for example, as technically siphoners are born with that ability, hence being somewhat of a subspecies of witches. Therefore, the siphoning ability isn't something every witch can do, only siphoners can. But with the different types of magic, any and all witches are capable of doing them with practice. And finally, this wouldn't include the umbrella terms of pure and dark magic, as that's really only used to classify how exactly a certain spell follows the laws of nature. If it follows the laws of nature, then it's pure magic. If it doesn't, then it's dark magic. God magic is the primordial form of magic, similar to how the originals are the primordial form of vampires. God magic is the oldest and most powerful form of magic, in which it supersedes any and all types of magic to the point that it negates them. So magic can never work on a god unless a workaround is created, typically with the help of a muse. There isn't much really known about God magic, mainly because we had less than a season to actually flesh out the lore around them. But we know it provides ability typically possible with regular magic, but on a much more powerful scale, and gods can do it with relative ease. Gods can travel through dimensions, enter people's minds, control the weather, grant and take away curses, resurrections, and they possess an increased physical strength. However, we have yet to see a witch possess or at least grant someone the ability to fly, which gods can do, or at least we don't know if they can grant it to people, but they can actually fly. Although not all witches can actually possess god magic, mainly only gods can, and therefore technically making it so that it can't really be classified as a type of magic, but I still feel the need to actually add it here because it is a primordial form of magic, and from it all magic is created.
Reconciliation isn't really her thing. She hates me as much as I hate her. And if you think that I don't play fair, wait to see what she's capable of. Because Ketsi and I have some common ground. Neither one of us will stop until we get what we want, and both of us want the cure.
Traditional magic is probably the most popularly used form of magic and is the oldest form of regular magic. That also serves as the foundation to every form of magic as we know it. It's basically a form of magic that requires you to exert the energy you possess to perform any spell, hence why it's seen as the type of magic that drains the user the most. Well, at least the basic form of traditional magic. This is mainly because the harder the spell, the more energy you need to pull it off. Which is why certain spells that actually use basic traditional magic tend to cause nosebleeds, dizziness, fainting, and potentially death, depending on how powerful the witch is in comparison to the complexity of the spell, or just how powerful the spell actually is. This is why a lot of witches tend to channel natural resources like plants of the earth or other magical beings in order to bypass this barrier. This is likely the basis for the other types of magics being created. Also, contrary to popular belief, traditional magic isn't mutually exclusive to dark magic, as dark magic is more the intention of the spell, and traditional magic is just how you do the spell. An example of this was Barney doing a soul transfer on Klaus and Tyler. The fact that she used it to beat death for Klaus and her friends is technically dark magic, hence why the spirits was mad at her. The same thing with resurrection spells and so on. It's still technically by definition dark magic, but you are still using traditional magic to actually do that.
How much power can you draw from 100 dead witches?
The answer to your question is a lot.
Spirit magic was created after Katherine created the other side and accidentally causing spirits of the supernatural to be pulled into the dimension. Any and all forms of magic that requires you interacting with the spirits or the other side in general is considered spirit magic. Spirit magic is typically used as an alternative to regular traditional magic, as the spirits grants witches a portion of their power to do spells. However, because the power belongs to the spirits, they have complete control over whether you get the power boost or not. The spirits can choose to give it to you, or they can choose to abandon you. And seeing as to use spirit magic, you have to be connected to the spirits. They can even physically harm you or others they're connected to. Typically, most spirit magic have an incantation of but after the other side was destroyed, that part wasn't really necessary. Also, like with traditional magic, you can use spirit magic for dark purposes. For example, Emily resurrecting Jeremy, which is still technically dark magic, but it's also still technically spirit magic. The definition of ancestral magic is the exact same as spirit magic. However, the only difference is that ancestral magic works with the spirits in the ancestral world, and not the other side. These spirits are labeled as the ancestors, hence the name ancestral magic. Like with spirit magic, the ancestors have absolute control over who gets their power and how much power they actually get. And the ancestors are a lot more violent than the spirits are. So they kill and harm witches a lot more often. And unlike the spirits on the other side, the ancestors don't really care if you use dark magic or not with their power, as long as you are not doing something that goes against their wishes. And if you do go against their wishes, like I said earlier on, they're a lot more quick to kill than the spirits are, and they will kill you very violently.
After taking me from my family, Dollar used me to forge a new brand of connective magic. One that augmented my power even as it allowed her to draw from me.
Take my hand and begin your chants.
Kum saluta.
Nobis. Medet Siglet. Kum saluta. Nobis. Medet Siglet. Kum saluta. Nobis Saman. Medet Siglet. Kum saluta. Nobis Saman.
Connected magic is a form of magic that allows a witch to create a semi-permanent bond with typically another magical being. This tends to serve multiple different purposes, the most prominent being to hold someone hostage, as with connected magic, anything that happens to one happens to the other, and that happens all the time. Connected magic can also serve another purpose to draw from the person you're connected to. This was what Dolly was using with Freya, in which she was creating some form of connected magic, which allowed her to augment Freya's power, or basically boost her power, while simultaneously drawing from it.
Stop.
Demon, help me.
Bonnie, you're killing her.
I know what I'm doing.
That's the magic talking. This is your best friend.
Damn it, Bonnie.
Expression is possibly the most powerful form of magic, as the powers that it possesses knows no bounds. In fact, the only thing that bounds it is just how far the practitioner is willing to go for power. Expression makes magic a physical manifestation of your will. If you will your magic to do something, it does it. The only thing that could stop it is yourself and how powerful you are. It isn't necessarily bounded by any laws of nature, just what your body can take. You can quite literally do anything with it. Hence why a lot of witches don't actually consider expression a form of magic, because it doesn't really conform to any laws of nature. To get even more power, you must complete the expression triangle. The more you complete, the more powerful you are. When you complete a triangle, you get a ridiculous amount of power. The most known and the most powerful practitioner was Bonnie Bennett, in which we see her do things that weren't even believed to be possible for a single witch to be able to do. For example, dropping the veil to the other side and later on putting it back up, taking on originals head on, and even materializing beings out of nothing but their soul, which is basically giving a soul a permanent foothold on the mortal realm. Bearing in mind, the amount of power actually required to actually do a similar feat is ridiculously powerful. A lot of the time, you have to channel a lot. For example, channeling the Nexus Vortia event, the combined power of the ancestors, or the death of an original.
Seek only to fulfill a bargain that consequently resulted in your very existence. Perhaps you should be thanking me.
Dahlia.
My child, I prefer Aunt Dahlia.
You dare enter my home.
I only came for what is mine. The time has come to have the child's power to my own. Though I do not detect her here, I see you've used a spell.
Necromancy is a form of magic and technically also a magic practice that allows a witch to reanimate and control or even outright resurrect a being that has already died. This type of magic is very powerful and typically requires a lot of channeling, although the more powerful witches can do it without channeling. This is most commonly used in New Orleans, for example, Divina, the Ancestors, and Freya, and sometimes used in Mystic Falls by Barney, the Heretics, and Ketsia.
Couldn't practice witchcraft, so I would charm some witches. And I taught them a new kind of magic that I'd learned in Arabia called Kemia. We made items that allow me to use magic without doing magic.
You taught them how to make dark objects.
Yeah? And for a time, they were scattered all around the city. Can't for the life of me find out where they are now.
Kemia is a relatively recent form of magic that is typically used by Arabian covens and was, as far as we know, created by them. And as Cole describes it, it is the intersection between science and magic. It basically allows a witch to physically destroy the elemental foundation of an object in order to turn it into another one, or to magically imbue an object with dark supernatural properties, which is how dark objects are created. This is how all the dark objects in New Orleans were created, after Cole told the witches there on how to use Kemia in order to fight off Klaus and his allies. An example of these dark objects is the Rosary of Madness, which is used to primarily hex someone to a slow descent into madness, which ultimately leads to their deaths. This was both used by Agnes on Sean, who is a twin brother of Cammy, and was used on Father Kieran by Bastiano. Not all dark objects were created through Kemia. Some might just be a combination of putting magic on an object, and some might just be combined into magical objects, like for example the indestructible wild stake. Kemia just alters the molecular properties of objects to make it do things that it usually wouldn't do, like for example turning one of the silver daggers into a golden one to be specifically used on Klaus.
This is your field of battle.
You can't ignore me forever.
Vampires can move across the board in one turn. The speed of the gods varies.
And these, magic to sculpt since the last Wizard Games.
Aurora de Martel. My erstwhile student, Jen. Her father, Ken. the father of an entire family of gods.
Algorithmic magic is probably the youngest type of magic actually on here, and it is a type of magic that is used to calculate probabilities. It's primarily only shown in Legacies, and the only known practitioner of it is Professor Voldemort. We saw him use this type of magic to create a simulation using an object called a manticulum. The object is encoded to act similar to how a Dungeons & Dragons campaign is actually made and how it's actually played, in which every single person within the simulation is actually encoded with their exact power and their exact power level. This is typically done to calculate the success of a specific strategy. And then finally you have traveler magic or spirit magic or body possession. This type of magic, as its name suggests, allows a being to actually possess another person's body or jump into another person's body or just put their soul into another person's body. This is a type of magic that travelers have to use in order to actually bypass their actual curse. This is mainly because travelers aren't allowed to be in the vicinity of other travelers, and they're kind of weak if they aren't in the vicinity of other travelers. So they use this as a workaround by just jumping into another person's body, in terms of calling themselves passengers, and then just using that body to actually perform magic and be able to actually be in the same vicinity as another traveler. However, they also have to jump into another person's body. The Travelers weren't the only people that actually use this type of magic. It was also used by the Hollow, Esther, and many more. For example, the Hollow was able to take over Hope's body using this type of magic, mainly to use the ridiculous amount of power that Hope possessed, and also the ridiculous amount of power that Hope could possess in the future. But if you want to know just how powerful Hope actually became in the future, then click the video that's on screen now.